So welcome. This is topic 2 of our class, and this topic 2 talks about what we call crisis. Is it crisis or issues management? Issues management. This is chapter 2 or topic 2 of public relations of this particular course, and we are going to look at issues management. Before we go to class, I would want to welcome those who are joining us for the first time, and feel free to ask any question that lingers your mind or that you come across, or anything that you feel it's not right. It is always good to communicate earlier than later. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time, you must realize that we have already covered topic 1, and we were looking at introduction. Let me just call it introduction to public relations, where we defined PR. We looked at activities of PR. We also looked at the models of PR. We also looked at what we call qualities of a good public relations officer. We defined PR according to, I think there were 3 scholars. And for you to get full class recording, it is in the portal. You just go to the portal, and when you go to the portal, you will see those notes. Just click on the recording. The recording will take you to YouTube, and from the YouTube you can learn the whole class. So I don't have to repeat everything. What it is that everything has been recorded, and it is on the portal. You only have to record to download it, or you only have to click, and then it takes you to YouTube, where you can listen to that recording, and then you can be at par with the rest. For quizzes and assignments, those ones there is no negotiation. If you miss those quizzes, if you miss those assignments, my friend, we press forward. Don't call me on Sunday. Mwalimu, I missed quiz 1 and discussion forum number 1. No, we are not going back. So let's move forward, and let us put that in our mind. Now, today we are going to look at a topic, and this topic is known as issues management. Maybe I can have somebody explain to us what is issues management before I share. Now, what is an issue? Frederick, you are saying I adjust my mic. I don't understand, because nimeweka sauti yangu yote. I've adjusted my mic accordingly, and I cannot shout because there are other classes that are going on as we speak. So if I shout, I'll be interfering with other people's classes, and they can also choose to interfere with mine by shouting louder than me. So I don't think I'll raise my voice towards beyond how I'm speaking, or how I have already raised it. That is it. Caroline, can you hear me? Caroline Nyambula, can you hear me? Frederick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So let's start our class. So I was asking whether we can have somebody tell us what is issue. What is an issue? So you can raise your hand. You can raise your hand. I'll see it. Stop typing there down on the chat. You raise your hand and you explain to us what an issue is. I'm waiting. Yes, Teresia.
Yes, an issue is a problem that maybe needs to be discussed or talked about. For are concerns.
Somebody else. Can you have someone else? Can we have somebody explaining to us what an issue is? Yes, Sheila.
An issue is a problem that needs to be solved.
An issue is a problem that needs to be solved. Any other person? The last person. Can we have another person explaining to us what an issue is? Then we proceed from there. Yes, Frederick.
Okay, I think an issue is upcoming problem which goes to irrelevant of the organization.
Thank you.
Something which goes opposite.
Thank you. Now, when you talk about an issue is, let me just call it, it is something that needs to be solved, just like you have said. There is a saying in Kiswahili that says, usipoziba ufa utajenga ukuta. So an issue is simply a problem, a small problem that needs to be solved. For example, let me give an example of what is happening in Laikipia. We have seen police being killed. We have seen people stealing animals, one community stealing animals from another community, and it's a cat and mouse game. And there is a lot of killing. People have been displaced, houses are burned, and so on and so forth. My friend, that is a crisis. If you do not deal with an issue, initially it was an issue, but somebody slept on his job. He didn't want to solve that issue. And because he didn't want to solve that issue, it became what we call a crisis. As we speak right now, it is a crisis. When you see people losing lives, when you see people losing properties, when you see stealing of cattle is becoming rampant, then just know now we are not dealing with an issue, we are dealing with a crisis. So therefore, an issue is a small problem. We can actually say an issue is a point of conflict between two individuals. It's simply a point of conflict. So if you don't deal with that point of conflict, it will become a crisis, of which we might not be able to solve such crisis. And crisis occurs in organization. Remember last time we said that public relations is the art and social science of analyzing trends, predicting their consequences. After predicting their consequences, you cancel organizational leaders. Then after canceling organizational leaders, then coming up with a planned program of action that will benefit both the organization and its publics. And we said publics are publics of public relations. For example, we have the media. The media is publics of public relations. We have the community. We have wholesalers. We have distributors. We have stakeholders. We have trade unions. We have all those are publics of public relations. Now, we say that the reason why we have public relations is to maintain goodwill and mutual understanding between the organization and its publics. Now, organization, they face, they anticipate these issues that they are going to happen. And because they anticipate these issues, remember issues, if they are not dealt properly, they create what we call a negative image of the organization. If an issue is not dealt properly and it raises or it graduates to become a conflict, not a conflict, but a crisis, then it brings about a negative image of that particular organization. For example, we can have an issue. Let's say, for example, we are not prepared for fire breakouts or something like that. Or maybe, for example, let me use this example. Employees are complaining because of poor management. Employees are complaining because of poor working environment. Employees have been complaining because of low pay. As an organization, you don't deal with that issue. You just let it be. One day, these employees will wake up and they will do what? They will go demonstrating on the roads. They will start picketing, assembling. and they are going to bring about negative image of your organization. And it will be too late. It now has become a crisis because you never solved it when it was an issue. So that is it. That is just a preamble, or that is just an introduction. Let me share my notes so that we can go through them. So there is something called issues management. Issues management simply is identifying, it's analyzing, it's developing positions and briefing management on public issues that will have a critical effect on the company. So you have to analyze, identify who does issues management. It's a PR practitioner. It's a public relations officer that will do issues management. So he needs to identify an area. He needs to analyze an area, developing positions, and also you brief the management on the public policy issues that will have a critical effect in the company. Remember, this statement by Mexican statement, it says that it is the art and social science of analyzing trends, predicting their consequences. So you have to predict consequences. Like you enter into an organization, there are no fire extinguishers. Fire is a common crisis in many organizations. There are no fire extinguishers. In case of fire, what will happen? It will burn everything in that organization. And as an organization, you'll have negative image because it shows that you are not prepared. And none of some people, like other publics of public relations, like stakeholders, will start running away, withdrawing. Shareholders, they will withdraw their shares from you. And then finally, the organization will fall down. So therefore, that is why we need you as a PR practitioner to analyze trends, to predict their consequences, and counsel organizational leaders. Tell them this one is wrong. This one will lead to what we call a crisis. Then by so doing, you are preempting any possible pitfall. So issues management is concerned with focusing. Focusing simply means you predict the likely impact or the consequences of an issue, and also advising the management on how to respond to them. I'm going back to the Mexican statement, to the Mexican statement. It says it is the art and social science of doing what? Of analyzing trends, predicting their consequences, counseling organizational leaders, and coming up with planned program of action that will benefit both the organization and the public. Simple. If you have that definition, I think tunaweza achia hapa na tuseme ya kwamba PR tunajua. Because when you look at issues management, it says that it is focusing on the likely impact of issues and advising management on how to respond to them. So there are various stages of issues management. There are various stages of issues management. Number one, for you to manage an issue, before it becomes a crisis, before it becomes a big problem that the organization will be unable to do what? To deal with. Number one, you have to create your own list of issues that appear to be on the move. Come up with your own list of issues. Let's say, for example, issue number one is fire. Issue number two, employees payment. Number three, poor working environment. Number four, sanitation. Number five, that is a list of issues that appear to be on the move. Then from there, assign priorities. Now that you have a list of issues that are on the move as far as that organization is concerned, assign priorities. To assign a priority simply means give the most important issue, put it as number one. Deal with the most important issue first, and the least important last. So assign priorities to the listing according to the time scale and the likelihood of the moving issue. Then from there, you are told, point number three, you validate. You're told to validate your time scale. Validate your time scale. That look at the time scale that you have given an issue. I say, for example, you are saying, I'll deal with fire issues from this month to next month, or in the next 3 months. So you need to validate your time scale with external sources you trust. The external sources are external organizations. Like, for example, if you're dealing with fire issues, you can liaise with the Nairobi Metropolitan, the fire company that deal with power. That deals with fire. You can deal with such organization and ask them how you're going to validate your time scale with them. Kuna mtu anatuchezea hapa kwa screen. This person is not learning, is busy doing what? Exploring Zoom. Sio ufanye ukiwa peke yako, mkiwa na rafiki yako. So validate your time scale with external sources you trust. Point number 4, set priorities according to the likely significance and the impact. In fact, when you set priorities, it goes, we go back to point 2, assign priorities, set priorities, then validate these priorities. Then from there, I think you're going to go through the stages of issues management. Let's look at the final stage. Finally, establish which corporate colleague is going to become responsible for the issue. Like, for example, you have established an issue. An issue is fire. An issue is strike. There is a looming strike because you predict the consequences. If these people are not paid their salaries accordingly, if we keep on delaying their salaries, the next time these people might not come to work. The next time these people might strike. The next time these people might start picketing. The next time these people may report us to what we call to the labor's office, labor laws, to the labor office. These people might take us to court. So finally, establish which corporate colleague is going to be responsible for maybe staff welfare, is going to be responsible for fires, is going to be responsible for maybe working environment, so that these issues do not, so that at least we can have somebody reporting from the ground. So what is crisis management? When you talk about crisis management, you're going to realize that many companies, or each company in this whole world, it is investing a lot of money, and it is investing a lot of time in developing and maintaining corporate reputation. By the way, coming up with a good corporate image is very difficult. Coming up with a good corporate image or good corporate reputation, it's one of the most difficult things. But tarnishing that image, it will not even take a second. It will take a microsecond to tarnish a corporate image that you have taken so many years building. A very good example before some of us were born, or maybe you are there. There is this company called Airtel, initially known as Kensel. Kensel, when people started buying phones, when phones started arriving in Kenya, they were very expensive. I remember the cheapest phone was going for 20,000. That was in 2002. I was still in high school. It was going for 20,000, even 100,000. Nokia 3310. It was a very classic phone. It was used by MPs even. During this time, people flocked the market. People wanted to buy lines. Initially, Safaricom line was going for 5,000 shillings. It was going for 5,000 shillings. Acha saa hii unapewa free. Unasema mimi sipendangi vitu za free. It was going for 5,000 shillings. Kensel line was going for 5,000 shillings. So it got to a point that Kensel started taking advantage of the customer. They started overcharging the customer, while Safaricom tried as much as possible. Credit, haungenunua credit ya chini ya 2,500. Credit was 2,500 or 1,000. Acha saa hii uko na credit ya 5 shilling. That is how it was. If you flashed somebody and you had 23 shillings in your phone, ujue akipick tu hivi ukate mara moja hiyo pesa inaenda. It was very expensive. So Safaricom realized this and it tried as much as possible to reduce the credit from, I think, 2,500 shillings to what? To 1,000, to 500, to 250, to 50 shillings, to even 20 shillings and 5 shillings. While KenCell maintained its what we call its lane. So that is how it was. Up to now, KenCell, Airtel is trying as much as possible to reach where Safaricom has reached, and they have never reached there. There is what we call Bharti Airtel. Bharti Airtel said that they are going to use the profit that they own, that they gain from India, to come and pour it among Kenya so that it can peak. Now, you can see how it is trying. Safaricom is trying as much as possible to, no, Airtel is trying as much as possible to beat Safaricom, but it will never do that because it already tarnished its own corporate reputation. So therefore, we are saying that organizations are spending a lot of time, they are spending a lot of money, trying to do what? To maintain their corporate reputation. And those of other of their products. So few companies, however, have in place procedures and personnel who protect those reputations. So that's why when a crisis occurs, there are those people, individual people that have been chosen to deal with those issues before a crisis occurs or to prevent crisis from occurring. For example, we are being told when a corporate tragedy occurs, when an organization faces a tragedy, people want to be reassured. I'm an employee of Zetech University. I want to be reassured that when I leave my laptop at Zetech University, it will be safe. I want to be reassured that when I leave my property at this particular desk, they are going to be okay. So that is why we have what we call crisis management. So they want to be reassured, the customers or the employees, in short, we can call them the public. They want to be reassured that the company had everything in place to protect the tragedy from occurring. People want to be reassured that this company has put everything in place and you don't have to worry about any crisis. They also want to be reassured that in spite of such preventive measures, the organization had the foresight to anticipate the possibility of something going wrong. They want to be reassured that analyzing of trends were made. They want to be reassured that preventive measures were taken. And they want to be reassured that the company already knows that such a thing can happen. Thirdly, the organization, they want to be reassured that the organization cares about what happened or cares about what will happen. They care about you. That's what they want to be reassured. But in today's age of corporate accountability, you're going to realize that companies must be prepared to communicate in times of crisis. An organization, it doesn't matter which organization you are working for or which organization you know, it needs to be prepared to communicate in times of a crisis. When I was still at the university, we saw fire burning Nakumatt downtown. Nakumatt downtown was somewhere there. Hapo kunaitwa namna gani? Hii bank inaitwa Stanbank. Is it Stanbic? Stanbic, something like that. And there was Nakumatt there, and it was burnt to ashes. I was in high school. So you can imagine such a crisis when Nakumatt was there. So preparation entails what? We are saying that in today's age, corporate accountability, Companies must be prepared to communicate in times of crisis. So preparation entails, number one, you need to conduct what is called a risk audit. What is audit? A risk audit is simply you identify areas where the company is most vulnerable. If the area is on employment, maybe the company employs people who are not qualified. If the area, if the, what do you call it? If it is an area of, say, for example, security, there is poor security. So the company needs to do what? To conduct a risk audit to identify the areas that it is vulnerable. Number two, preparation entails you identify audiences who could demand information in crisis situation and how you will communicate with them. How you would communicate with them. For example, in a time of crisis, media will be there. It will be the first one. The media personnel will be the first one there. The other personnel who are going to be there is the Nairobi Metropolitan will be there with their fire extinguisher, with their fire brigades and everything. The community will be the first one. Suppose, for example, it is Zetech University burning. The community, the people around the will be there looking at it burning, something like that. Shareholders are going to be there. They are going to demand information. Shareholders. You remember that company, it has shareholders. Shareholders simply means that they have a share of the company. They have a share of the company. They are going to demand communication. What else? The public is going to demand information. The government also is a public of public relations. It is going to demand for communication. And therefore, you must identify those audiences. Thirdly, you must identify and train spokespeople. My friend, let me warn you from now henceforth. In case of a crisis in your organization, when you see media people there and they are seeking for information, and maybe you work in that particular organization, if you have not been appointed as a spokesperson by that company, never speak on behalf of that company. Even if the media is pressing you to speak, never ever do that, because you might say something that jeopardizes the company. So therefore, we are saying that whenever you are doing preparation, you need to identify people. You need to identify people who, in case of communication, in case of a crisis, they will be the one communicating on behalf of the organization. But if you have not been appointed, never ever. Kwa sababu unataka kuonekana kwa TV, wewe ndio ulikuwa wa kwanza kwa gate, ukaona shule inachomwa ama ukaona watu wanaenda strike. My friend, never ever communicate. Usitake kuonekana kwa TV, because you can say something that the organization, that can jeopardize the organization. Another thing, as a communicator, if, for example, you are the spokesperson who have been chosen to speak in case of a crisis, and the media is there, is waiting for communication from the organization, and you delay them, and you tell them to go, unawafukuza, unaambia tokeni hapa. My friend, media people are very cheeky. They will seek information from other sources. And when they seek information from other sources, they might write something that is not true. Of course, it is factual, but it is not true about the organization. And you'll find yourself in a very awkward situation. So when you see the media people as the spokesperson, in fact, you should welcome and explain to them what happened. Otherwise, if you don't, they will seek for the information. And they might write something that is not true. Of course, it is factual about that particular organization. So the next point, preparation also entails testing everything. That in case of a crisis, you test. The fire extinguishers ambazo umewekewa pale kwa organization, test them. Some of us don't know how to operate them. Test everything. In case of a fire outbreak, you test. There is what we call simulation test. I mean, simulation exercise. Unaambiwa, and this one happens in organization, and you are trained. In case of a fire, this is the door that you're going to use. In case of everything, this is what we are going to do. And in case of, you are shown the process, and you do what you exercise it. You exercise that particular process. But when a crisis comes, it never knocks. Maybe umeambiwa this is the emergency door. In case of fire, all of us are going to use the emergency door, and then you are going to assemble at the fire assembly point. What if hiyo moto ianzie kwa emergency door? What if hiyo moto ianzie kwa fire assembly? So those are the things. So whenever there is a crisis doesn't knock, and it can start where you did not anticipate it will start. So number one, we have said you're supposed to conduct a risk audit, and we have explained what a risk audit is. We have also said you need to identify the audiences in case of communication, and who should be responsible for which docket. Who should be responsible for which docket? I think we have looked at that, identifying audiences. We have also said you identify and train spokespeople. Not everybody during a crisis should speak. Kwa sababu umeona kamera, umeona Lilian Moi na kamera hapo, umefurahi sana, you want to go and be the first one to appear on Citizen TV. My friend, you are not supposed to speak to the media. You're not supposed to speak to the shareholders. You're not going to speak, you are not supposed to speak to the people or the public that demands communication in regard to a crisis, unless you are the chosen spokesperson to do that, unless you have been trained to do that, because you might say things that may jeopardize the company. And you know what? You'll be the first one to go. You'll be the first one to be fired. Sometimes you can even be taken to court to explain everything. Also, there are some people who are, we are told that some members of the senior management need training in techniques for successful handling television and radio interviews. Sometimes you're called by the media to explain what went wrong. Why did the employees go on strike? They were complaining of poor working environment. Is that the reason? So whenever you are speaking, also be very careful. Be very careful. And then there are some organization now. That one you're going to read. So again, you are being told, test everything. Point number 4, we said, test everything. Test everything. Test everything when it is working. They are called simulation tests. Simulation tests are, for example, plants that are today treated extremely seriously by few companies. For example, ni kama tunasema stage managed events. Simulation tests are stage managed events. Tumetoka training, tumeambiwa in case of fire, this is what we are going to do. So you imagine there is fire in that company, and you start doing simulation exercise or simulation tests. Munatoka nyinyi wote, you dramatize, you stage manage. It is stage managed. So in case of fire, this is what we are going to use. We are not going to use the lift. We are going to use the stairs. This is the emergency door. In case of fire, we are going to assemble at that point, and you act what you have been taught. You act what you have been taught. So that to see whether we have understood. That one is meant to see whether we have understood, and whether in case of fire, whether that is how we are going to do it, to react, or to something like that. So crisis management team. A typical crisis management team could consist of the managing director. When you're coming up with a team, crisis management team, you can have the managing director. It can consist of a PR manager. It can also consist of works manager or technical officer, also safety officer, and lastly, the personnel officer. Personnel officer, those who are doing HR. Who is a personnel officer? Those who are doing PR, HR. Can I have somebody explain to us who is a personnel officer? Kama nijichagulie. Nichague. We have somebody doing the HRM. Yes. Yova Stacy. Yova, can you see me? Can you hear me? Yova and Rebecca Osita Amukure. Can you hear me? Yova.
Yes.
Who
Yes,
is a
you can
personnel
hear you.
officer?
A personnel officer is someone
Is someone? Yova Jui. Rebecca Osita of Amukure. Who is a personnel officer? Amukure.
Yes.
Who is a personnel officer? Amukure Ajui. Now, let me educate you. Let me educate you.
Who gives advice and support to
Can you mute Rosemary? Chege, Rosemary, mute your microphone. Rebecca Osita, switch off your microphone. Yeah, somebody is saying here the HRM Waweru Kila. Is it? Jina yako Waweru ni ngumu sana. Hebu tuambie jina yako vizuri. Can you say your names?
Kyla.
Kyla. You're saying that
Yes.
a personnel officer is who?
He's in charge of employee relations and staffing issues.
Good, good. Let me tell you one thing. Those who are doing HR, for the purposes of our knowledge, anybody initially, this is an old term. Personnel officer or personnel manager, this is an old term for HR officer, a human resource manager, or a personnel manager. This is an old term of human resource manager. So the human resource managers, they are involved in the human, I mean the people working for the organization. So when you hear of a personnel manager, personnel officer, these are simply what we call the human resource officers or managers. At least you know that. At least you have known that today, for those who didn't know. So you're supposed to test everything. We have said that it has also what we call the personnel officer. So that is the team. The crisis management team should consist of the individuals that we have listed down and that we have highlighted in yellow. Yeah, that's the one that we have highlighted in yellow. So when you talk about a crisis can be likely or unlikely. And that is it. The likely crisis is the one that is that you know that it will happen. It's likely to happen. The unlikely crises are things like maybe an earthquake. You know very well, you have lived in Kenya for a very long time. You have never heard of crises like earthquakes. And if they are there, they are very minimal. Those ones are unlikely crises. The likely one is fire. Fire is likely. Employees going on a strike, it is very likely. And so on and so forth. For example, you are talking about fire at petroleum farm, a possibility of sinking ferry. Those are likely crises. A hotel also will be conscious. Those who are doing DHM will be conscious of food poisoning. Food poisoning is a likely crisis. Kama unafanya DHM, unapata ya kwamba mmeprepare chakula vizuri, employees wamekula ama kuna watu walikula chakula alafu wakashikwa na food poisoning, and then you find yourself in the media. Suppose you work for Hilton Hotel, or suppose you work for Silver Spring Hotel, those who are doing DHM, and people who ate food on a particular date or a particular week, they fell sick, and some of them, almost half of them, have died or have lost their lives. That will bring a very negative image on that particular hotel of yours. And people will not even like to associate themselves with your hotel. So that is it. So unless there is a question here, I'll stop at that point. I'm trying as much as possible to finish on time so that I can also give you sufficient time to do the activities. Any question? Any question? Silence means consent. So therefore, because there is no question, may I have some activities for you to do? These activities must be done within the time that you've been given. So I'm trying to open those activities. So today's lesson is not big, cumbersome. It's not that long. So number one thing that you must know is that today's notes have been unleashed. You can download today's notes. Today's notes have been unleashed. So you go to the portal and you download those notes. You can download anytime you so wish, anywhere and anyhow you like it. The next thing is that we have activities with us here. So activity 2.2, we are being told that in not less than 200 words, discuss what communication entails in crisis management. In not less than 200 words, discuss what communication entails in crisis management. Then post your discussion in the provided discussion forum. Post your discussion in the provided discussion forum. Then there is a quiz 1 there. Apart from quiz 1, let me talk about something. There is assignment 1. This assignment is open from today to 7th next month. So ninasema hivi, hii assignment si ya muhimu sana leo. Haufai, sio ya muhimu sana leo. Lakini kama unasikia ya kwamba unaweza kuifanya leo ni sawa tu. Hii assignment inafunguliwa leo ama imefunguliwa leo na inafaa kuwa submitted next month tarehe 7. You have at least 14 days to do that particular assignment. That is assignment 1. That assignment will be graded with other courseworks, and with other quiz and the discussion forum. The last thing is that today's register attendance. We go to today's register or attendance. So the password for today's register or attendance, let me share it there on the public chat. The public chat. So that is the 7RU77X. That is the password for today's register. Another thing, I need somebody to be my assistant on WhatsApp group, so that you can be able to accept those who requires to join that group. So can we have somebody who is going to be my assistant? You can write on that group. You can write anything on the group. Sema tu umejitolea, so that I can make you an admin, so that you can accept others or those who have not joined. You can even share the link. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. Immediately you write, I'll make you the admin immediately. I'm saying on the WhatsApp group, so that you can share that link. Say right now, nikupatie hiyo, ama unaweza kutushare hiyo link. Can somebody share that as that link, so that those who have not joined can join? There are so many people who have not joined that group. So I need to do what? To log into what we call my desktop. My WhatsApp that is on the desktop, so that I can be able to share the link, copy it and paste it on this particular forum, so that people can join. As we speak right now, we are how many? We are 35, and from this group I can see we are 40 something. So acha ifungue, it's opening, so that I can share that link to those people who have not joined, so that they can join us. So can I have somebody? Pate mtu ambaye atajitolea, so that I can make you the admin. Nasikupatie admin alafu uende uongeze maadmin wengine hapo. So Stacy, I've seen Stacy. So Stacy, I'm making you an admin. How do you call yourself in the group? Yeah, Stacy, I've seen you. Make the group admin. Now, Stacy, you are the group admin. You can check your WhatsApp. You are now a group admin. So you can share my link to others, so that they can join. I can see 2 people have already joined. Thank you. So as we proceed, can we go and do our activities? Can we go and do our activities? Yeah, the group. Stacy has already shared the link, so you can use that link to join the group. That group will be used particularly for communication. If there is anything that I need to communicate, things to do with assignment, class attendance, I'll be communicating in that group. Sawa. So let's go and do those activities. Let's meet next week, a day like today. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your week.